Good morning, folks, and in this video today I wanted to demonstrate how you can split names with split full names into first and last names and deal with names that might have a second prefix in the last name, and then decide how you want to deal with that. So first of all, here's a list of names, and of course we want to set this up as a single formula. Let's just show how we could do it. First of all, we're going to use the split function. We're going to split this text, and the next thing we need is the delimiter, which in this case is a space wrapped in quotes, and then we can leave the rest of that blank. So let's go ahead and just hit enter. And as you can see, we have this Jan de Wit. We've come up with three different columns because of that middle prefix. We could do this, double click, and that would copy down, but we want to build a single formula to do this, so let's see how we might do that instead. Let's try wrapping that first with an array formula. On a Mac, that's Command Shift Enter. When we're in the box here, Command Shift Enter, turns it into an array formula, and that doesn't help us. And that's because we haven't really set up an array. But if I do :A, then we do get, with a single formula, applying an array formula, we can get all of those names split into the different columns. However, we get these value errors all the way down the rest of these where there isn't any data in A. So let's take care of that. We're going to do that with an if statement. We have two ways we could do this in an if statement. So we'll do our array formula. Then we're going to do if A to A, in other words, if A to A is equal to, if A to A, well, actually what we want to do, if is blank, if is blank, A to :A, and let's go ahead and close that. And so if that is blank, and I see we have an issue here. We need a new if statement or new parentheses. If is blank A to A, don't do anything, else split A to A. Let's see what happens if we do that. Well, we get a false on all of those. And that's because we left off a comma here, so a second comma there. So it says if is blank A to A, don't do anything, else split. So let's try that. There we go. So that's one way you could do this. You could use the if is blank. We could also, and let's just demonstrate this, we could also take this same formula. So let me go ahead and copy this, and let's come over here and let's paste, and we'll see we get the same thing, but we could change this from if is blank. We could say if len A to A. What we would want to do at that point is switch this and put our comma, I think, here. Nope, so that means our comma needs to go here. Try that. Nope, let's check this out. So yeah, if you put the comma here, so it says if len, and that's the length. So if the length of A to A is basically greater than 0 is what that says, then we're going to split this, else we're not going to do anything. So two different ways to do that same thing. So now what we have is a formula. Go ahead and get rid of that. We'll use this if is blank. If we wanted to keep this like this, then we really don't have the last names in a single column. So we still have to try to address this issue. So the way to do this would be to go, let's just start equals if is blank. Again, we're going to look at to see if it's blank. So we're going to say if is blank D2. So if this column is blank, then we want to use C2 as our output, because that would give us like last name Good and Samuels and so forth. Else, we want to join D2 or C2. Else, we want C2, and in this case, we need a space because of the way this is set up, and D2. And let's see what we do when we get that. We missed an argument in there, and I think that's because we need to close this. D2 is blank, and then I think, yeah, there we go. So now we could we know that this is going to be our first name. This is going to be our prefix, possibly, or it's going to be the last name. We don't know, and this would be a last name, and this would be our full last name. So if we were going to fix this to bring the last names here, we would have to do that. Now we could again copy this down, but we want to do this as an array formula. So Command Shift Return or Control Shift Return, and then of course we have to make an array. So :D and :C, :C, :D. And when we do that, now because we have the is blank, we don't get any value errors down here. And now I do have, I could do something like this and go ahead and hide those columns. And now I have a first name and a full last name, and that might work for us if that's the way we wanted to do that. I'm trying to grab this to lock the row. There we go. So Jan DeWitt becomes Jan DeWitt, Johnny Good, James Samuels, and we do all that with this single formula. Let me show one other quick tip here. I often like to take a formula like this, and let me go ahead and copy this. I'm going to copy. And then I like to take a formula like this and go ahead and use an array literal, so I could get my header in here. So I'm going to do an array literal, and I'm going to do full last name, end quote, and then a semicolon, and then paste in that formula that we had, and be sure to close out our array literal. And now notice this becomes our formula instead of this becoming our formula, and we handwrite our header. So that does solve this problem in this way. But recently I had a client that wanted to solve it differently. They wanted to separate these names into 3 columns. Let's take a look at how we could do that. So quickly, we've already shown how you take a name, you split it, we've got that piece done. And then what we do is we take a look at this case where we say if is blank B2, and in that case it's not really ever going to be it. Well, it is only going to be blank if we have this. Then we're going to not do anything. Otherwise, we're going to bring in B2. So that's always going to be our first name. Then we're going to look and try to build this prefix for its own column. We're going to say if is blank D2, that would be this column. Let me highlight that. So if this column is blank, then we aren't going to do anything for a prefix because there would be no prefix for those users. Else, give us C2, and that's going to be what we find in this column. So these ones don't return anything, but this one will return the da and the la and the ta, okay? And then that would be that formula. And then finally, to bring in that final last name, we would say, again, if it's blank F2, that would be in this case this column. If this one is blank, then we want to bring in C2. That would be the last name. And if it isn't blank, in other words, in this case, it's not going to be blank, then we're going to bring in D2, which is going to be that. And if we use this triple set of formulas, we start off first of all with the split, and then we have to follow through with this way of looking at what is blank and then coming up with a way to split our names into 3 separate columns.